Well, thank you, everyone, for tuning into our program today. You may know that Family Talk is a listener-supported program, and we remain on the air by your generosity, literally. If you can help us financially, we would certainly appreciate it. God's blessings to you all.
Today on Family Talk.
In Hebrews chapter 10, we read that as believers, we are to spur one another on toward love and good deeds, and also to encourage one another. Another recognized verse is found in Proverbs 27, where we read that as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. It's clearly stated in Scripture that we are to motivate and support each other along our spiritual journeys, and that exchange extends to inspiring our children as well. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk. I'm Roger Marsh, filling in for Dr. Dobson today, and we're about to hear the conclusion of a really inspiring speech presented by Dr. David Jeremiah. He is the founder of the television and radio ministry called Turning Point. Dr. Jeremiah also serves as senior pastor of Shadow Mountain Community Church in Southern California. On today's broadcast, we'll hear the conclusion of a talk Dr. Jeremiah gave by giving parents 4 crucial ways that they can use to build up their children. He'll also highlight why being our kids' cheerleaders is exactly what they crave the most. Let's listen in now as Dr. David Jeremiah addresses the topic of encouraging our children on today's edition of Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk.
I believe there are 4 things we need to do. First of all, if we're going to encourage our children, we're going to do it through focused attention. The one thing that most affects the families and most discourages individual kids is the lack of focused attention on children. How many of you know it's possible to be home and not be home? How many of you know you can come out of a day that's filled with stress, walk home, and you got kids all around, some little and some teenagers, and you can be in the setting surrounded by your family and not really even be aware that you're there or that they are there? Good people, godly people, often very busy people, allow their children to grow up without taking the time with each child, and so the children come and go without any sense of who they belong to or without any sense of encouragement from home. Somewhere along the way, our kids need to know that we know who they are, what their issues are, and we're going to put something we might do on hold so that we can focus on them. Let me give you the second thing. Number 2, not only focused attention, but number 2, we need individual affirmation. Do you know each child needs to understand that we know they're different than the rest? And I'll explain to you what I mean. I'm blessed and I have the perfect family, 2 boys, 2 girls. But my family is different in this sense. I've got 3 children who are really into sports and athletics. My youngest daughter, and I got 2 boys that went to college on football scholarships. I've always been able to focus and understand them. And then I got Jen, our oldest daughter. She's not into sports. And I really blew it big time in the early days because I didn't know what track she was on. I didn't know how to relate to her. And one day it dawned on me that Jan's spiritual gift was shopping. It just hit me. I realized that I figured out that Jan was into shopping. Now, I got to tell you, I'm not into shopping. I really don't. I mean, Jan was on the all-mall team. I mean, she was really something. She was unbelievable. And I'll never forget when it suddenly hit me, men and women, that as much as I love to go to the football games and stand on the sidelines and be a part of the activities that these kids would, I needed to plug in to that young lady. And one year at Christmas time, I got some extra money, and I told her, I said, honey, we're going up to North County Fair. We're going to spend a whole day shopping, and I got money. And we used to have this joke that if we ever got lost in the shopping center, I'd open my wallet and she'd find me. You know, that's kind of the way it was. But we went up there that day, and I had to really think this through because I don't know very much about this. So what we did was we kind of had little rendezvous places. She'd get some money and she'd go shop, and I'd say, no, we'll meet here and you can tell me what you did. And I'll never forget that day. And I don't think she will ever forget it either. And you know, Jan's married now, and not long ago I had the opportunity I knew that they needed a new bed, and so I called her. I said, honey, we're going to do a shopping thing tonight. We're going out and buy you a bed. And we went out to a furniture store, and I helped her, and we picked it out. I understood something about her that was different than the rest, and I got in on her wavelength. Now, every one of us has that challenge with our children. The worst thing we can do is to try in some way to force them into the mold that belongs to the rest. They're all unique. In fact, in the book of Proverbs, it says, train up a child in the way he should go. Every child has their own way. And blessed is the parent who learns the way of their child. Take notes. Be a good researcher. Find out what wavelength they're on. Ruth Stafford Peele said it this way. She said, the secret is this. Watch to see where a child's innate skills or talents lie. Then gently, do not expect too much too soon, but gently lead or coax him or her in those areas. It may be difficult for a father who was a crack athlete to understand and help a son who would rather play chess than football. But chess, not football, is what such a boy needs if confidence is to grow in him. If he does that one thing well, he will come to believe that he can do other things well, and he won't be afraid to attempt them. Children are encouraged when we affirm their originality. They are all different, but they're all gifts to us from God, and it's our responsibility as parents to go to school on them and figure out what makes them tick. It may take longer with some than the others, but I want to tell you something. Individual affirmation is critical. Let me give you the third thing. Focused attention, individual affirmation. Principle number 3, genuine appreciation. Do we really appreciate our kids? I remember a story that Steve Farrar tells in one of his books about a Texas family who took appreciation a bit too far. A lot of rich Texans went broke back in the 1980s, and there are still a few rich Texans left, but one of them was recently talking to a banker in New York. After several minutes of conversation, the Texan took a liking to the New Yorker, and he said, I've got a great idea. He said, why don't I send my jet up to New York this weekend to pick you and your wife up, and we'll have you join us at our son's ranch. Yes, sir. He's got a 100,000-acre land stocked with quarter horses, purebred cattle, and exotic game. Yep, I'm real proud of the boy. He earned it all by himself. Sounds like your son's very, very successful, said the Texan. Just exactly how old is your son? He said, he's 8 years old. He said, 8 years old? How on earth did an 8-year-old boy earn enough money to buy a ranch like that? He said, he got 4 A's and 1 B. I mean, now that's how he rewarded him. Now, we laugh at that because that's way out of sight, and we understand that that's not the way things go. But did you know Colossians 1:21 says, fathers, don't provoke your children lest they become discouraged. What do you think Paul meant? I think what he meant was, literally another translation says it this way, don't embitter your children. The text seems to be speaking of a father who governs his family by objection. Have you ever known any fathers like that? The only thing they ever noticed is when something's wrong. The only thing they ever see is when you step out of line. A lot of managers manage like that, and unfortunately, a lot of those managers manage their families like that. I remember a young man who was one of the highest scoring guards in high school, scoring in the 30s. And when he would come home from a game, his father waited for him in the living room. And when he would walk in, he would never say, great game, great streak. He would say, I can't believe you missed the layup on the fast break. He would always remember the shot the kid missed instead of seeing the shots that he made. You know, men and women, if you do that, you're going to have some embittered, discouraged kids. I love the 1-minute father says you should walk around trying to find him doing something right. Now, for some of you, it's going to be a longer walk than for others. I understand that. But God wants us to look for the things we can do to encourage our children. It's terrible to live in a family where nobody ever notices that you do something right. And some of us may have grown up in families like that, so we have to go back and relearn the whole pattern. Rich DeVos, president of Amway, was once asked in an interview on television, what is the most important management skill you learned in the process of building the Amway company? And you know what he said? He said, the most important management skill I learned was how to be a cheerleader. How to be a cheerleader. There has never been a generation of young people, and I say this passionately, men and women, there has never been a generation of young men and women who have needed parental cheerleading like our kids do today. Cheerleading parents can make a lifetime contribution to the lives of their children. Our children are growing up in the wasteland of discouragement, and the only hope they have is if they can get some people around them who will encourage them in the right direction. I always think about this when I remember the baptism of our Lord Jesus Christ. Do you remember what his Father said? Listen to this. This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Say that out loud. This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Now that's King James language, but oh, what it means to a kid when you can look him in the face and say, I'm proud to be your father, proud to be your mother. I'm pleased with you. I'm grateful. I know that when we come to an event like this, often we go home and our notebooks are full, and so where do you start? And your kids know you're here too, don't they? I mean, so where do you start? I love the story about a mother who had just finished reading a book on parenting. She was convicted about some of the things she'd been failing to do, especially appreciating her children. So with this conviction in her heart, she went upstairs to talk to her son. When she got upstairs, all she could hear coming from his room was the sound of his drums. He was a drummer. She had a message she wanted to deliver, but when she knocked on the door, she kind of got cold feet. Got a minute, she said. Mom, you always have a minute for you. Come on in. You know, son, I just love the way you play the drums. He said, you do? Well, thanks, Mom. She got up and went back downstairs. She realized that really wasn't the message she'd gone up there to give him. So back up to the door she went again. She knocked at the door. She said, it's Mom again. Do you have another minute? He said, Mom, I told you before, I've always got a minute for you. She went over and sat on the bed. And when she looked at him and she said, when I was here before, I had something to tell you and I didn't get it said. And what I really want to say is your dad and I, well, we just really think you're great. He said, you and Dad? He said, yep, your dad and I. He said, well, thanks, Mom. Well, she left, and once again, halfway down the stairs, she realized that really wasn't the message she'd gone up there to give him. So she went back up. She knocked on the door again, and this time he heard her coming, and before she could ask, he shouted, yeah, I got a minute, Mom, come on in. She sat down on the bed once more, and she said, you know, son, I've tried to say this. I've tried it now twice today, and I haven't gotten it out, and I'm just going to say it. What I really came up here to tell you is this. I love you. I love you with all of my heart. Not Dad and I, but I love you, son. Did you hear me? He said, thanks, Mom. And he gave her a great big hug. She started out of the room and was back at the head of the stairs, and her son stuck his head out of the room and he said, Mom, do you have a minute? She laughed and said, sure. He said, did you just come back from a seminar? And you know what? Some of you will go home from this time and you'll say, you know, there's some things I need to do, but they know I'm here. Just forget it. Just do it anyway. You've got to be a someplace start. Isn't that true? You just got to go home and start someplace, affirming and encouraging. Let me give you the last one. We encourage our kids not only by focused attention and individual affirmation and general appreciation, but here's the one that's hard for a lot of us who grew up in my generation, physical affection. We need to love our children in a tangible way, by what we do, by what we say, by putting our arms around them and hugging them and letting them know that they really are important to us. Many of us, my age, and I'm 55, we grew up in a generation that wasn't into that. And I see kids today growing up, and they've grown up in hugging families. They hug everybody. And you know, our kids need to know that we care enough about them, and I love to hug my children. I've learned how to do that, and I'm learning how to do that with my father. I remember the first time I tried to hug him, and he tried to shake hands at the same time. You can get hurt doing that, you know. But we're gradually learning how to do that, and I think in the world in which we live today, one of the things our kids need more than anything else is for us to show them physical affection. One of the hardest relationships, and I've actually written some stuff about fathers and daughters, is our daughters get older and they stop being little girls and start becoming grown-up young ladies. Sometimes fathers back away at a time when they shouldn't do it. Our kids need our physical affection. And you know, if I can just add this one thing, part of physically expressing our love to our children goes beyond the hugging, but it goes into the whole area of being at ease with them and having fun with them. If I look back on my life now as a parent with my children kind of out of the nest, and I remember all the things that happened, and I ask my kids, what do you remember? I'll tell you what they remember. They don't remember those high and lofty spiritual moments that we had. They remember the crazy things we did together, and I want to tell you about one of them. When we moved to California, I had never ever before been exposed to what people do to show their affection for someone they like in the high school. And we got there, and my son David got involved in the 6th grade at that time, and he was a good athlete, and he was kind of popular. And all of a sudden, I walked out of my house one morning, and I looked, and toilet paper was hanging over everything that was out there. I mean, our house was our trees. And I said, what's this? He said, oh, they kind of do that if you're in the in group. Well, I said, that's cool. We cleaned it up. It happened again the next night. And I kid you not, men and women, 10 nights in a row, we got TP'd. And finally, I said to David, do you know who's doing this? And he said, yeah, I do, Dad. He said, he named her. I said, do you know where she lives? He said, yeah. I said, well, I'll tell you what, Friday night, you get about 8 of your buddies, and we'll show up here. And we had a van then, a big leisure van. I said, I'll drive, and I'll buy the toilet paper. So I went to the grocery store, and I bought 72 rolls of toilet paper. We met at 8 o'clock. We loaded all these guys up in the van, and off we went. We went to Courtney's house, and we had all these signals, you know, one beep if I see somebody, you guys hit the van, and we're out of here. I felt like the wheelman in some robbery or something, you know. And we went and we dumped all 72 rolls of paper on that girl's house. And I can remember now as I was driving out of there with these guys, wondering if any of my deacons lived down that street. I was hoping they didn't. And you know something, I got to tell you, I told that story on our national radio program, and believe it or not, I got a letter. I got a letter from a woman. I hope she's not here today, but if she is, so what? And the letter said, Dr. Jeremiah, I heard your story about the toilet paper, and I cannot believe you would tell that on a national radio program of all the waste. She said, I went to the grocery store, and I found out how much a roll of toilet paper costs. And I added it up. I multiplied it by 72, and she said that money could have been given to the mission field, to the missionaries. I had this unholy thought. I said this to my church. I said, most of the missionaries I know would have rather had the toilet paper. But you know what? When I read that letter, friends, I worry about somebody like that, don't you? I worry about somebody who can't kind of be a kid a little bit with their kids. When we talk at our family about the things we did that were cool and fun, it's stuff like that. Dad drove the van when we TP'd Courtney's house. Now, we've risen to new heights in California. We got forked not long ago. If you've never been forked, you don't know what it's like. They buy thousands of little white plastic forks and stick them in your lawn so that it looks like they're growing up out of your lawn. I mean, I don't want to start any trends back here in Indianapolis. But I have discovered this. It's really great for the grass. It aerates the grass, you know, and it grows. Anyway, I just want you to know that now in this stage of our life, we're very thankful for the fun things we did with our kids. And I hope that if you're in the stage where you still have an option, and Dad, if you're so busy you can't ever do that, then you need to back away a little bit and maybe rework your priorities some. Because I want to tell you, it seems like just yesterday we said hello to them, and then it was just a few weeks ago we stood in the driveway and had prayer and cried because Daniel was going away, clear off to Louisiana. It goes by so fast, doesn't it? And isn't it just a wonderful thing to be able to step back for a moment and say, what can I do while they're here to encourage them? And you know, they need encouragement after they're gone too, don't they? I told about parenting not long ago at Word of Life Bible Institute in a seminar I did there, and I was talking about how once a parent, always a parent. How many of you know that's true? We're gonna drag our tired parental feet through the pearly gate someday, you know that? And I said, you know what, you never stop being a parent. Even if your kids are grown and gone, you're still, he said, you know what, Pastor Jeremiah, he said, you're absolutely right. He said, I have a friend whose kids are fully grown. And he said he worries about them all the time. Do they eat right? Do they dress right? Are they living right? And he said, my friend's 90 and his kids are 70. I mean, you never do really get out of being a parent, do you? But while we have opportunity, we ought to be thinking, is there some way I can bring encouragement? You know, the world will discourage them. Let's make it our purpose to encourage them and make their lives special. 27-year-old Michael Murray decided to take his 2 children to the medical center in Massachusetts where their mother was on duty as a surgical nurse. You see, the family wanted to drop off some Mother's Day presents. They had a gold necklace with the words "Number 1 Mom" and a single rose. And with their mission accomplished, the father and his 2 children made their way back to the darkened indoor garage where the car had been parked. And Murray gently set the infant seat and 3-month-old Matthew on the sunroof of the car, turned his attention to buckling Matthew's 20-month-old sister into her seat, and without thinking further, Murray slid into the driver's seat and drove off, forgetting that Matthew was still on the roof. Pulling into the expressway that cuts through the city, the driver accelerated to 50 miles per hour, and then he heard it, a scraping on the roof of his car as the tiny seat with Matthew strapped in the seat began to slide. He said, I looked to where Matthew should have been in the car, and then in the rearview mirror, I saw him sliding down the highway in his infant seat. And that's where he landed, in the middle of the interstate, in the path of the oncoming traffic. An antique dealer named James Boothby was following the Murray car when he saw the whole event unfold. He saw young Matthew sail off the roof and hit the road, and this is what he said, and this is a quote. I saw something in the air. At first, I thought someone had thrown some garbage out the window. Then I saw it and thought it was a doll. Then the doll opened its mouth, and I realized this was a little baby. It just landed on the road. It bounced a couple of times, and it never tipped over. It just landed on the road and slid along a bit, and I slammed on my car brakes and turned my car around in the lane so no other cars could go by, and jumped out of my car. And I ran and I found an uninjured baby in an undamaged car seat and scooped him up in my arms and took him back and gave him to his petrified father. Now that story is about as close to a grade A miracle as anything you and I have ever heard. God intervened in that situation, or it would never have happened.
It is our prayer that what you've just heard from Dr. David Jeremiah over the past few days here on Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk has been a motivation to you to be a better parent, or perhaps to prepare you for the day when you do have children. Now, if you missed part 1 of this presentation on yesterday's program, go to our broadcast page at drjamesdobson.org. While you're there, you can also learn more about Dr. David Jeremiah's ministry called Turning Point as well. Again, go to drjamesdobson.org and then click onto today's broadcast tab. Dr. Dobson loves to hear how this program in particular, and our ministry on the whole, has impacted you and your family. If you have a story of how God has used the ministry of Family Talk in your life, and you'd like to share your thoughts with us on one of our broadcasts, for example, call the Family Talk listener feedback line at 844-823-2669. And finally, as we conclude today's broadcast, won't you consider being a financial partner with the ministry of Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk? These spring months can be a bit of a challenge, a little up and down in nature when it comes to the financial dealings of ministries. So any contribution that you're able to make at this time would be greatly appreciated. You can go online to drjamesdobson.org to make a gift through our secure website. That's drjamesdobson.org. You can also call our offices toll-free at 877-732-6825. That's 877-732-6825. 6825. We're so grateful for your prayers and your financial support of this ministry. Now be sure to join us again tomorrow for a very special broadcast featuring the actor Jim Caviezel. He's best known for his role as portraying Jesus in the movie The Passion of the Christ. I was able to catch up with him a few weeks ago at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention in Nashville. We discussed his new role portraying Luke in the movie Paul, Apostle of Christ, which comes out this weekend in select theaters. It's a great conversation that you will not want to miss. Be sure to join us again next time right here for that discussion on Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk. I'm Roger Marsh. Thanks for listening.
Family Talk is not associated with Focus on the Family.
Hi, Dr. Tim Clinton for Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk. Hey, right now, grab your cell phone, go to your app store, and click on the Dr. James Dobson Family Talk app. Download it right now, and you can start listening anywhere at any time. 24/7, 365.